Hi everyone and welcome back. In today's video I'm going to take you through how to make this cat collar with just a few tips and tricks that have helped me along the way. So for materials you want a piece of fabric. I'll put all measurements on the screen and in the description below. You want some iron-on interfacing. I use 2 strips here in half the width of the fabric. I'll explain why in just a minute. You can just use one in the same width as the fabric if you'd like. You also need a quick release buckle, a tri-glide, and a D-ring if you want to add any collar attachments like a name tag, and thread in the same colour as your fabric. So to start I'm going to take my fabric strip and place it face down on my ironing board. I'm just going to run the iron over it at this stage, take out any creases, but also it warms up the fabric and that helps the glue adhere from the iron-on interfacing onto your fabric. Now, like I said, I use 2 strips here. Now, your iron-on interfacing will have a shinier side, you can't really see it on the camera. These are the glue dots, so you want to make sure that this goes down onto your fabric. So the reason I use 2 strips in half of the width, it just helps me when it comes to folding all of the fabric in to prep the collar. But if you don't think that's really necessary for you, just use 1 strip in the same width as your fabric. But again, 2 to 3 inches shorter than your fabric strip, and this is just to reduce the bulk for when you from when you sew on your hardware. I'm just going to take my second strip at this point and repeat the process. Now, when you're ironing on your interfacing, you want to start by pressing down the iron until the glue melts and it adheres enough, and then you can run your iron over. If you just run it over immediately, it's likely to shift and it's not going to glue properly. Let it cool down for a bit, and then you're just going to take it and fold it in half. I like to finger press it down just to create a bit of a crease. It helps it to hold before you iron. And once it's cooled down, you're just going to open it up and fold the edges into that centre. Again, I'm just going to finger press my fabric down to help create that crease before I go in with my iron. Flip your fabric over and just repeat that process with the other side. Now that we've ironed our edges in, we're just going to refold it and iron it some more. Now this next part is optional. If you have pinking shears and you're just making it for yourself, what you can do is just cut the edge off and that'll create a zigzag to stop the fabric from fraying. However, if you want a bit of a clean look, then what you need to do is open this back up and we're going to take the end and fold it in, I would say about 1/4 to 1/2 inch, and then press it down with the iron. If you're using a steam iron, just make sure your steam is switched off at this point because you don't want to burn your fingers. Now usually when I watch videos you would then just fold it in and sew it. I don't really like the look of that and I'm going to show you why. So if I hold this up, you can kind of see the overlapping fabric. I like mine to be as clean as possible when I do this, so the trick that I do is just open it back up and where you've ironed in your lines, you'll see a little box. Just take your scissors and just cut just inside that box. You don't want to take too much off. If in doubt, take less because you can always take more later. And just cut a diagonal. This also helps you reduce the bulk for when you sew. Now if I fold that back together, you'll see it is reduced, but it's not perfect. Now I'm just going to take some clips here and just hold that in place before I carry on and do my other side. So repeat the process by opening up your fabric, folding it over 1/4 to 1/2 inch and pressing it with your iron. Fold it back together and press again. And I'm just going to repeat the process with cutting the corners as well, to just reduce that folded look. Now, I said earlier that it's not perfect, and this is why. Sometimes you can get little bits sticking up at the corners, so all you want to do is just kind of trim those down, but again, be careful not to trim too much. Do little and often, because if you take too much off, you're going to have a wonky collar. So I'm just opening it up halfway and trimming those off, and then once I fold it again, I'll actually trim excess if I still need to, which I do in this case. This just helps to provide that really clean look. I'm just very picky, to be fair. You could probably skip that step. Now, I'm just going to clip this closed to help me sew, but what I will say, at this point, what you want to do is check your fold lines, because if you need to fix them, now is the time, because you don't want the edges to be overlapped, you want them to be precise, you want them to meet each other perfectly, and that way when you sew it, you're not going to miss one of the edges and create a bit of a wonky look. Right, we are finally ready, after all that ironing, to sew. Take your collar piece and just remove the end clip, and we're going to place it under our foot. Now for this, I have used a slightly heavier needle, so I've used a 90/14 needle. My stitch length is 3 and my tension is still 4, and that remains the same throughout this entire video. If you've got a newer sewing machine, you might get away with a lighter weight needle, usually an 80/12, but for me it can be a bit clunky, so I just upgrade to a slightly heavier one. Now make sure it's lined up so that the edge of the strip is just past the centre line, because you want to get the thread quite close to the edge, but not too close that you're going to run off. I'm just going to sew forward, backwards and forward to lock in the stitch, and then it is just a straight line, taking out your clips as you come. When you get to the end, you're going to lock in your stitch again by going forward, backward and then forward again. There we go. Now I always start with the side that needs that's open, that needs to be sewn together, and then I'm just going to repeat the process on my folded side just to make that nice even look. And there we have it. Now we just need to sew on our hardware. So the first thing I'm going to do is find that side that's got an inch less interfacing. This is the side that you're going to sew your tri-glide onto. So if you have a curved tri-glide, just make sure which side's your bottom, which is your top, because you want to go from the bottom up, fold that over and double back on yourself, and then you're just going to sew a straight line to sew those pieces together. Go back and forward on it a few times just to make sure that it is locked in. Now, to stop it from shifting and to just relieve my own stress, I like to hand crank the first few stitches. Once I know that the fabric isn't going to shift at all, then I will use the pedal and sew it properly. Cut your threads. And now I'm just going to show you how to sew on the buckle. So I like to use the male end, the prong end first, and I want to make sure this little bit is facing up. Just going to find the end of the strip and I'm going to put it through the buckle from the bottom. So again, with curved buckles, make sure you know which side's your bottom and top. Put it from the bottom up, slide that along, and then you're going to thread it back through your tri-glide again. So from the bottom up, and then double back on yourself, down through the tri-glide. And there we go. The benefit of this is that little piece is now kind of tucked inside, so you're not going to see it when the cat's wearing it. And all that's left to do is to sew on our D-ring, if you're having one. Slide that on just now, and just slide it right down out of the way, because the next part we're going to sew on is the other end of the buckle, so the D-ring doesn't really matter at this stage. Take the other half of your buckle and pop your fabric through it from the top down. Now this is why we left 2 inches shorter on the interfacing, because you need more when you're sewing on the buckle and a D-ring. And I'm just going to sew a line to sew in the buckle. I've just kept my D-ring right out the way just now so that it doesn't get in under the presser foot. And again, I like to hand crank a few stitches and then finish off with the pedal. Go back and forward to really lock in that buckle. I'm just going to trim my threads and then finish off the final piece. So slide the D-ring back up. Make sure that that fabric's over it. And then we're just going to repeat exactly what we did. Hand crank and then a few pedal stitches backwards and forwards to really lock that in. And there we go. It is incredibly easy once you've done all of the prep work to make your own cat collar. Quick release buckles are an absolute must for cats, just for safety reasons. But as always, like, comment, subscribe, and let me see any photos if you do make it. I always love to see them. And join me next time for another video. Bye!